Lucas Hale had guarded many important people during his career. Generals, diplomats, corporate leaders. But nothing in his training had prepared him for guarding an alien royal family. The Palace of Aulares floated high above a violet ocean that stretched across the entire horizon. The water below looked like glowing glass, reflecting the strange alien sky filled with silver clouds and distant stars. Massive transparent towers curved upward like frozen waves. Streams of glowing energy moved through the palace walls like rivers of light. To Lucas, the entire place felt less like a building and more like a living machine that had decided architecture was fun. Still, Lucas stood perfectly straight at his security position. Professional. Calm. Alert. Inside his mind, however, things were less calm. Do not stare at the floating ceiling, he reminded himself. Professional guards do not stare at ceilings. Unfortunately, the ceiling kept changing colors like a slow sunrise. Lucas forced his eyes back toward the corridor. That was when he noticed something again. Princess Kale was staring at him. She sat beside Queen Shira at the long royal council table while advisors discussed complicated topics about trade routes, star systems, and military treaties. Lucas only understood half of it. But he understood the princess was watching him very closely. Her silver eyes studied him with the intense curiosity of someone looking at a strange puzzle. Lucas stayed perfectly still. Professional bodyguards did not react to royal staring. Still, after several minutes, he began wondering if he had accidentally committed a terrible cultural mistake. Did I salute the wrong person? He replayed the morning in his mind. He saluted a royal officer. He nodded to a translation drone. He almost saluted a statue before realizing statues usually did not blink. Everything seemed normal. Yet Princess Kale continued watching him as if he had personally invented gravity. Lucas shifted his weight slightly. The floor moved. Not much. Just enough to remind him that alien architecture sometimes adjusted gravity fields. Lucas smoothly corrected his balance. Very professional. Inside his head he thought, if the floor does that again, I will pretend it was intentional. Across the chamber, Queen Shira spoke calmly with her advisors. She ruled one of the most powerful empires in this part of the galaxy. Her silver hair flowed down her back, and her long curved ears marked her clearly as Larian royalty. Lucas had read the briefing files. The Larian royal family possessed something called resonance awareness. Some strange ability to sense emotional energy between people. Lucas had understood about 3% of that explanation. For now his job was simple. Stand still. Watch everything. Protect the royal family. Preferably without fighting the furniture. Unfortunately, the furniture seemed interested in him. Behind him a small floating chair drifted slowly across the room. Lucas glanced over his shoulder. The chair drifted closer. It rotated slightly. Then it stopped. Lucas narrowed his eyes. Don't start, he whispered quietly. The chair floated away again. Lucas nodded once. Problem solved. When he looked forward again, Princess Kale was still watching him. Now she looked slightly amused. Lucas blinked. Great. The princess just saw me threaten a chair. The next morning, things became even stranger. A small hovering drone appeared beside Lucas during breakfast. A soft blue light glowed from its body. Security Officer Lucas Hale, the drone said politely. The Royal Research Council requests your presence. Lucas blinked. Am I in trouble? The drone paused. That outcome has not yet been determined. Lucas sighed. That is not comforting. Still, he followed the drone through the palace corridors. The hallways curved like silver rivers, glowing with alien technology. Outside the glass walls, massive oceans shimmered far below. At one point the corridor tilted slightly upward. Lucas stopped walking. The corridor stopped tilting. Lucas looked down. All right, he muttered. Let's keep gravity normal today. The floor remained still. Eventually the drone led him into a large research chamber filled with floating machines and spinning rings of light. Several alien scientists waited near a glowing platform. One of them stepped forward. Officer Lucas, she said politely. Lucas nodded. Please tell me this is not about the chair. The scientists looked confused. What chair? Never mind. The scientist pointed to the glowing platform. Please stand there for 2 minutes. Lucas looked at it carefully. It looked suspiciously like the kind of machine that either scanned you or teleported you somewhere unexpected. How safe is this? Lucas asked. Very safe, the scientist replied. Lucas stepped onto the platform. Rings of light formed around him and slowly scanned his body. The sensation tickled slightly. Lucas looked down when the machine made a cheerful sound near his boots. Did I just pass a test? One scientist checked the readings. Yes. What was the test? Your footwear integrity. Lucas nodded. Good to know the boots are doing their job. Then the scientists suddenly became quiet. One screen flashed. Another beeped. A third displayed strange energy patterns. The lead scientist leaned forward. Run the scan again. The system repeated the process. The warning appeared again. Lucas crossed his arms. Should I be worried? No, the scientist replied. She paused. Not yet. Lucas sighed. That word yet is doing a lot of work. The scanners continued reading deeper biological signals. Neural patterns. Energy signatures. Quantum harmonics. Lucas squinted at the display. That sounds expensive. Then one of the younger scientists gasped. That cannot be correct. The lead scientist opened another database. Ancient records appeared. 2 energy patterns floated side by side. One belonged to Lucas. The other belonged to someone recorded long ago. The patterns aligned. Almost perfectly. Silence filled the room. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Okay. Now I'm curious. The scientist turned slowly toward him. Officer Lucas, have you ever visited this world before? No. Have you ever encountered Larian resonance technology? No. Then this result should be impossible. Lucas rubbed the back of his neck. That word again. The scientist took a deep breath. Your quantum emotional signature matches a historical pattern stored in our royal archives. Lucas frowned. Is that bad? No. The scientist hesitated. But it should not exist. Lucas leaned forward. Whose pattern is it? The scientist answered quietly. The former king of all Ares. Lucas blinked. The queen's husband. Yes. Lucas stared at the screen. So you're telling me I share emotional energy with a dead alien king? The scientist nodded slowly. Lucas leaned back in his chair. Well. That feels like the universe making a very strange joke. Meanwhile, in the palace gardens, Princess Kale suddenly stopped walking. She looked toward the research towers. Something strange had just happened. She could feel it. A familiar echo. A melody she had not heard since childhood. And somehow, it was coming from the human guard. The news reached Queen Shira within an hour. The Royal Observatory Tower was silent as the scientists showed her the data. 2 glowing resonance patterns floated in the air. One belonged to her late husband. The other belonged to Lucas Hale. They were not identical. But they were close enough that the ancient Larian recognition systems refused to ignore the similarity. Queen Shira stared at the patterns for a long time. Finally she spoke. This is not reincarnation. No, Your Majesty. This is not possession. No. Then what is it? The lead scientist answered carefully. Emotional resonance can sometimes echo across time and space. Shira folded her arms. That sounds suspiciously like destiny. Scientists preferred not to use that word. But the data suggested something very close. Shira turned toward the observatory window. Far below she could see the palace gardens. Her daughter stood there with Lucas. The princess was laughing. For the first time in years. Since the king had died, Kale had carried a quiet sadness that nothing had been able to ease. Yet now she looked lighter. Hopeful. Shira exhaled slowly. The universe had placed a strange human guard in her palace. And somehow he carried an echo of a connection she thought was gone forever. Not the same man. Not the same bond. But something familiar. And that familiarity frightened her. Because hope was dangerous. In the palace garden corridor, Lucas was having another argument. With the floating chair. Personal space, he told it. The chair rotated slightly. Princess Kale stood nearby, laughing quietly. You speak to furniture as if it understands you. Lucas shrugged. On this planet that feels like a reasonable safety precaution. Kale smiled. Then she studied him again with that thoughtful expression. You feel familiar, she said softly. Lucas sighed. I hear that a lot now. It is not memory, she explained. It is like hearing a melody you heard long ago. Lucas considered that. So when you look at me, you hear music. Yes. Lucas looked down at his boots. Well, that is concerning. I have no musical talent. Kale laughed again. But then her expression became more serious. My father felt similar. Lucas froze. The former king had been a legendary explorer. A calm, thoughtful leader who believed different species could live together peacefully. Lucas scratched the back of his neck. That is a lot of pressure for a security guard. You are not him, Kale said. Good, Lucas replied quickly. Because that would create a lot of paperwork. Kale smiled again. But the feeling remains. Lucas looked at the sky. Princess, does that bother you? She thought about the question. No. What does it feel like? Like the universe wants our paths to cross. Lucas nodded slowly. That sounds suspiciously important. At that moment the floating chair drifted closer again. Lucas pointed at it. I see you. The chair stopped moving. Kale laughed. You bring unusual energy into this palace. Lucas shrugged. I try my best. Later that day Queen Shira requested to speak with Lucas privately. He stood respectfully in the observation hall as she entered. The Queen looked calm but thoughtful. You know about the resonance? Lucas nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. You are not afraid? Lucas considered the question. I have spent the week arguing with chairs and suspicious fish. My definition of strange has expanded. For a moment the Queen laughed quietly. Then she became serious again. My daughter believes the universe gave her a second chance to feel something she lost. Lucas listened carefully. She knows you are not her father, the Queen continued. But the connection comforts her. Lucas nodded. I understand. The Queen studied him closely. And you? Lucas looked out the window at the violet oceans below. When I arrived, this assignment was just a job, he said. And now? Now I care about keeping your daughter safe. Shira watched him carefully, searching for honesty. Finally she nodded. That is all I needed to know. She gestured toward the gardens. Walk with me. They stepped outside. Princess Kale looked up when she saw them. Her eyes brightened immediately. Shira watched the two of them carefully. Then she spoke quietly. The resonance does not mean the past has returned. Lucas nodded. I know. It means the future has opened a door. Lucas glanced behind him. The floating chair had followed again. He sighed. I knew it. Kale laughed softly. The Queen shook her head. You have brought something unusual into this palace, Lucas Hale. Lucas gestured toward the chair. I blame him. The chair rotated slightly. They all stood quietly in the glowing garden. Floating water spheres drifted through the air like tiny planets. For the first time since arriving on Olaris, Lucas did not feel like an outsider. He felt like someone who had become part of something much larger. Above the palace, the stars moved slowly across the sky. And somewhere in the quiet movement of the universe, an old melody had found a new rhythm. Not the past returning, but a new story beginning.